this could be quite possibly the greatest thing that's going to be added to this truck.
Can't believe this is happening.
Yeah! All right, welcome back to another episode of Staff Inspection. On today's episode, we're gonna do something super fucking cool that I've always wanted to do since I was a kid, and that's have NASCAR noises coming out the side of my goddamn vehicle. And I've got Mr. Mullet motherfucking Mike in the building to help me out. If you're unfamiliar with Mullet Mike, let's just cut to a little commercial that he's done that all of us here at the shop have seen.
At Orange County Muffler, no muff too tough, we dive till 5.
Here's what we got going on. This is a set of boom tubes off of a stock car that a friend of mine had sent me. And basically, we want to try to get this thing to fit on the C10. Now, there's gonna be some tricks with this because this was meant to come out of the passenger side of a flat bottom stock car, obviously, and it's all oval tubing and it's got weird bends in it. So I had to bring in the big guns here to help manage this situation. So what do you think we got to do with this to make it work?
Ain't gonna be no problem, man. We're gonna do a little slice and dice and we're gonna be ready to roll.
Okay. Have you ever some NASCAR stuff before?
I haven't done any of that shit, but I only brought 6 beers, so we gotta knock this shit out pretty quick.
That's cool. I got a whole fridge full over here too, so
Oh, hey, then we might be here for a while.
Hell yeah, man. No muff too tough?
We dive till 5, baby.
Let's get it.
So what I would do right here, now that we got it kind of mocked up where we want, we're gonna put some hangers on the tip, because this tip's kind of heavy, it's hard to move around. So we'll put some hangers on it, and then we can start fabbing up the front, chop the front, get the front to connect. We're gonna try and get this up a little higher. So we're gonna hack this thing off right here, and then reposition it, see what we got. Basically, we just want like a, you know, a bevel that way. See, like but the whole way.
Bro, I appreciate you. So we got this all basically welded in except for the flanges?
Yeah, you gotta take down the flanges where the bolts are at and then just weld that and then we're dialed in.
Nice, clean weld. Fuck yeah, man. Dude, you made lemonade out of this situation, bro. I mean, I know this was like a really funky setup, but yeah, dude, it doesn't look bad at all.
It's a little bit like your cousin, but you know.
All right, truck's on the ground. Should we see how this thing sounds?
That's what I'm waiting for.
You into it, Wally?
I'm into it.
You in it, Diego?
Start that shit.
Okay, let's do it. Sounds like pure freedom! Okay. That's totally daily drivable. Ian? Oh. God damn!
That sounds sick.
Is that loud out there?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It sounded good when it revved up. It was like, whoa! Woo!
Wow. That's way louder than it was with open headers. Yeah. That basically just was the
It was like, hell yeah, on the left corner.
Hell yeah.
That shit is loud as fuck. It sounds good though.
Oh yeah, dude, mullet life.
It sounds good.
Thank you so much for coming out. Ralphie, thanks for stopping by too.
No problem.
Hell yeah, that thing sounds right. It's a new day, and again, we're out here working in the parking lot. So today, we're doing something incredibly responsible and extremely important. We're installing some AC. Boys from Vintage Air were kind enough to come out and make sure that I didn't botch this job myself, because let's face it, I am not a professional. I'm learning all this as well as we go. So I'm gonna try to take you along this journey with me, and we're gonna learn how to install one of these kits into a C10. So before the guys from Vintage Air get here, I'm gonna try to get some stuff out of their way so we can streamline this process. Now, whenever you're installing one of these systems, the first thing you gotta do is take out the dash. Definitely helps when you're using crusty stuff that cracks. Pliable. Went ahead and took out this middle support here because we're gonna have to get the condensing unit in there, and it will not fit. You can't really squeeze it and turn it around here, even with the radiator out. So this way we can just prop it in, put that thing back on, be on our way. 6 bolts, super easy. The boys from Vintage Air are here now. We got Mr. Rick, Mr. Ryan.
I'm Rick Love with Vintage Air, Vice President there, so we'll do a little bit of everything.
Wait, you're the Vice President? And you came all the way out here to install this?
Ryan's the Vice President as well. You got
Man, all right. Well, I think we're in good hands today. So the way we're gonna do this is, obviously these guys know what the hell they're doing. I don't. So we're gonna take this as a learning opportunity, both you and I, so we can figure out how to get one of these in a C10, which I'm told isn't really that hard. You guys want to get started?
Absolutely.
Right on. We got some of the front kit laid out. Walk me through what comes in the kit here.
Okay, real quick, the way air conditioning works is basically you have several components. You've got a compressor running on the engine, and then you've got a condenser that's in front of the radiator, and you've got an evaporator inside the truck. The way air conditioning works is the evaporator absorbs the heat from inside the vehicle, and then you've got a condenser in front of the vehicle that dissipates that heat to the outside. So we're going to start with the condenser kit, and that's what we've got here. We're going to assemble this. The SureFit kit comes with brackets that will adapt this basically universal condenser to our pickup.
Okay.
And it'll be a bolt-in operation. We've got some hard lines to go through the core support, and when we get it all installed, it's going to look like a factory installation.
Nice. And this is a dryer?
That's a receiver dryer. Yep.
Okay.
That'll go on there as well, and we'll kind of talk about that when we get it all in there.
Rock and roll. We'll get this on, and then when we get to the inside, we'll lay all those parts out, because this is where all the trick stuff is.
The way this firewall is set up, once you locate the firewall in the truck, there's 2 bolt holes in the firewall that mate to this bracket on the front of the evaporator. And so I put a stud in the evaporator bracket and pushed it through the firewall in the appropriate hole. And so basically that puts this where I need it. Once I line up the second hole, that's going to get the unit in position. Then I'll level it. And once I get it leveled left, right, and fore aft, then I'll come in here and drill these holes in this front bracket. It needs to be leveled both left, right, and fore aft so that it drains properly. If it's sagging towards the back like this, it'll collect water right here and then it'll start stinking. These are the only 2 holes I'm gonna have to drill in the cowl here, and that's gonna put us where we need to be. I'll pull it back out, I'll put all the hard lines in it, feed it through, and then we can finish up the evaporator. Basically, when we install the O-ring, you need to lubricate it with a drop of refrigerant oil before you feed it into the fitting. Just let it kind of roll around. And then when I put the fittings in, I seat the O-ring like that and hold it tight and run the nut on. If you just do something like this, a lot of people do something like this and just run the nut on. You don't know what's going on in there, and you end up pinching the O-ring and you end up with a leak after everything's done. I'm just gonna slightly snug these, and then we're gonna mock it all up with the bracket and everything. Get the firewall cover mocked up, put the other 2 lines, and we'll get these all grouped. and oriented with the firewall cover, and then we'll tighten everything up and put it in the truck.
Yeah.
So basically, when I pull the nut off of here, you'll hear the nitrogen escape. It's basically your indication. If no one's taken the caps off since it left our place, you'll always have the nitrogen escape, and that's an indication that it's been pressurized until it got to you. There's no leaks in it. If your system's all finished and you have a leak, you're going to be looking somewhere other than inside the unit.
Condensers all in, all the hard lines through the back of the core support. So we're ready to connect to the
Nice.
hard
Looks
lines
good.
here. We've got our grommet in, our plate to tighten everything up. We've got our trinary safety switch installed in the dryer, and we'll talk about wiring that in later. Again, that's for your compressor safety and also to engage your fans with AC temperature. So
Very cool.
now we're getting ready to install the evaporator, which is the heat-cooled defrost system inside the vehicle. This is our Gen 4 module. It's fully electronic. You have stepper motors to control all the doors, 2 separate coils, an AC coil and a heater coil like any other late model vehicle with a blend air door between them. And the brackets are specifically designed for the square body truck. We've already installed the hard lines on the evaporator that'll come through our custom firewall cover. So that's all in. And the kit also includes a new control panel that'll bolt right into the factory location on the square body pickup, give you a variable speed blower and a variable air delivery and hot and cold temperature blend. So all that's included with the kit as well. New defrost ducts, adapters to hook on to your factory air louvers. We've got a new glove box door for the shortened glove box. We'll get that on when we get done. Our wiring harness here to tie everything in together and all of our instructions. And we've got a good sheet metal, stamped sheet metal cover to cover up where your roll fresh air inlet used to be here, and we'll get that installed with some silicone. Ryan's finishing up the powder coated firewall cover, and we've got that ready to install for the last time. So in a minute here we'll put some silicone behind that, install it for the last time, seal up your engine management wiring harness, and we'll be ready to put the evaporator in. So we're in good shape.
Hell yeah. All right, it's day 2, getting started again with the boys from Vintage Air. What are we running into right now? So it seems like there's some wiring issues, and it's just a little confusion because I've obviously got an engine that wasn't meant for this vehicle, and then a new harness that was meant for the old style. So what are you running into, and what's the workaround for it?
So originally this truck had an engine-driven fan, but you've added an LS with electric fans. So when you have electric fans, you need to have a way to turn on the fans if either the engine is needing cooling or the AC is needing cooling. And a lot of times the AC needs fans when the engine doesn't. So a common misconception is that folks will rely on the engine coolant temperature sensor to turn on their fans and ignore the fact that the AC may need fans when the engine doesn't. And so we add a trinary switch to the system. So normally this is a pressure safety switch here on the AC system, and normally they come with what's called a binary switch, which just turns off the compressor if the pressures are too low or too high.
Okay.
This trinary switch adds another switch to it, and what that allows is when the head pressure on the AC system demands it, it closes this switch and it calls for the fans to be turned on. Normally we ground one side of this, and then the other side provides ground to the fan relays. The fan relays in this system are high side switched off of the E38 controller that's on it right now. So basically we called up Texas Speed, talked to them. They said we could tie into the same relays, we would just need to diode protect. So basically, instead of grounding one side of this switch, we're gonna feed it switched ignition power to one side, and then feed that back to the relays, and then we'll diode protect so that we don't get any feedback to the E38 ECU. That way, when this switch closes, it'll turn the fan relays on and turn the fans on regardless of whether the engine's warm or cold. One of the most common things that happens, we'll get calls from folks that they start their car up, turn on the AC, and the compressor's turning on and off real rapidly. And they think that the AC controller is turning the compressor on and off, but it's really not. remember I talked to you about the engine not being warm yet. So you start up the engine, engine's not warm, fans aren't on, but the AC is. So it starts building pressure in the AC system. The pressure climbs rapidly, and we're talking within 15-20 seconds it'll be high enough that you need those fans. If the fans don't come on, the pressure will reach 400 psi and it'll turn off the compressor. The pressure falls off, compressor comes back on. So the compressor's coming on and off rapidly. They think it's the controller for the AC system, and it's not. It's the pressure safety switch turning it off. And that's why you need that trinary switch. You need those fans to come on when the system demands it.
You also don't want to do, a lot of guys will wire it up as well to where every time the AC compressor comes on, they have the fans running. The problem with that is when you're running down the highway, there's no reason to have your fans running. You let the engine or the AC tell you when you need the fans.
All right. So what's going on here, man?
Just kind of prepping up underneath here before we put the evaporator in. I'm going to do some insulating on the firewall. Basically, I'm going to insulate from this ledge here up to the top of the firewall, and then up over this cowl, because this cowl area here is also hot. This is outside air here. This is under hood air here. All of this is going to be hot, and I'm going to insulate everything before I put the evaporator in, because once it's in, we're not going to have a shot at fixing that. So
Hell yeah.
we'll insulate all this, and then when you do the interior, you'll be able to get everything else.
Nice, thanks, man.
So basically, I test fitted this yesterday, and I drilled for this rear bracket, which mounts to the evaporator here and then up to the cowl area. So I got that all in yesterday without having to manipulate this, because I didn't have the hard lines on it yet. Today, I put the hard lines on. When I did that, it makes it deeper, so you can't get it back up underneath there. So there's 2 bolts back behind this dash. Pulled those guys out, and it allowed us to pull the dash out, pull the whole dash back, and then we can lift the evaporator up in there, feed the hard lines through the firewall cover, and then with Rick's help. So I threaded this bolt through this weld nut from the cabin forward and used that like a stud to hook the hole in the firewall. And I got that hanging on the firewall. We put a nut on the outside, and then I had Rick feed me a bolt through the lower mounting hole from the outside in. So that's the little trick to get it hanging there in position so we can work on the bottom.
All right, you guys ran over to Napa to get these heater hoses,
Yeah.
right? So what's the deal with these?
Yeah, so basically the vintage air heater uses 2 5/8 inch fittings. This LS engine has a 3/4 inch and a 5/8. The 3/4 is the return, and the 5/8 is the pressure line out of the water pump. So it's going to come from the 5/8 line up here to our heater control valve, and then into the heater, and then back out of the heater, still 5/8, going to come over here to the 3/4 inch in. So this hose right here, got it molded in 90, so we're going to be able to cut it to length. We'll cut a little bit off here, and we'll be able to put it up on the line and have just basically a perfect formed hose. It goes from 5/8, and it's necked up on this end to 3/4.
Nice.
So
if you want to pick these up,
You know, this is, find it at any Napa. There's a part number. If it'll focus before the camera dies, there you go. And then this is the other one.
so do you guys actually have these in stock?
we do. We have both these hoses in stock as well.
Okay.
This fitting right here, this is the suction line. This is the line that exits the evaporator and goes back to the compressor. This is the one you always, when you feel that it's cold, and it'll sweat. And so we're insulated up to the nut, and we're insulated after the nut to the firewall. The system comes that way. But this little section right here of exposed metal, it's gonna sweat if we don't insulate it. So I've got this, we call it press tape. It's a cork tape. And this stuff is really tenacious, and it'll grab onto these fittings right here and seal them up and insulate them. So just a little bit at a time, I'm going to work it in around these fittings and seal them so that it doesn't drip on your feet.
Cool.
Don't get it in your carpet. But any exposed metal on the suction line, the return line to the evaporator has to be insulated. And I'm also going to put a little bit on the top of this expansion valve back here, because the expansion valve, basically, this is what does a lot of the work. And one side of it's going to be warm and the other side is going to be cold. So I'm going to put a little bit around the end of it too. We mocked all these lines up, and once we got them all in position to where we wanted them, we marked the fittings exactly how we wanted them oriented. So you can see on here we had everything screwed together. You can see on here we marked with the little silver marker the fitting and the hose to get the orientation, because we have a 45 on one end and a 90 on the other. So we did the same thing on this one here. I've already crimped it. So basically that's going to get this hose perfectly oriented once I crimp it. If you don't plan that out, you're going to be wishing you had, because you cannot twist these things and orient them right.
No swivel.
No swivels on them.
It's what, a hydraulic crimper?
Yeah, it's a hydraulic crimper.
Can you rent these tools, or do you have to buy them?
We sell these, and
We also have loaners. We
Yeah, I was
loan them
gonna
out,
say we loan 'em.
and you can just, we'll charge you a deposit, and then you can keep it for a week and then send it back. So usually what we recommend is have everything all ready to go, and then get the loaner, and then you're ready to turn it around in a day, and then you can get it right back to us.
Nice.
I'm getting this fitting lined up, centered in the dies, and then close the valve, and then just pump it up. And we're going to pump it all the way until this gap here closes. Get out. That's done. You can't use regular hydraulic fitting crimpers. So if you go to a hydraulic store and they want to use a hydraulic crimper, like a hydraulic hose crimper, they have to have AC hose dies. If they don't, it's not going to work.
So, we're talking drains now. This is important because obviously you don't want a bunch of water dumping into your cab.
Here's the drain hose, and the system comes like this. If you put this thing in and forget your drain hose, you won't forget it for long, because it'll be dripping on your feet and your carpet and making a mess. And we always save this for the last step, but you need to plan ahead for it, because I got lucky here. I was able to put the hole where I needed to put it, but had I not planned and wasn't able to get the drill in there, I would have had to take stuff back out. I cut a hole in the floorboard right there, which drops straight down at the rear edge of the front inner fender. Put a 90-degree fitting on our drain hose, hook it up right here, and drop it right out. So that routes perfectly. You need to have at least an inch drop from the outlet of the evaporator down to where it exits the car. No kinks. You don't want to kink it. When you do place this, you don't want this to drip down on, like right on your frame or something like this. This is outboard of the frame. You want it to get a clear path right down to the ground. You don't want it to drip down into an inner fender or something like that where it'll rust. So now we're gonna turn on ignition and see if it actually works.
Right on.
Well, the backlighting works.
Backlighting works.
Gauges work. Blower turned on.
Oh,
Yeah. All right. There's the AC mode toggling on and off. So the blue LED means the AC is in AC mode. I can adjust my temperature within AC mode. If I go to hot, AC mode toggles off. You'll also hear the blower change speed when I toggle. Mm-hmm. Good to go.
Hell yeah. Rock and roll.
Refrigerant in there, evacuate and charge, and we'll be blowing some cold air.
Do some burnouts, yeah.
Well, we will get to the burnouts soon enough, but everything basically is in. Just got to connect some of the duct hose in and then put the dash back together, and that's no big deal. But all the lines are ran nice and clean right there. Back to the AC compressor. And I mean, you can't really tell behind the grill here, but everything's in. It's nice and clean, looks pretty much stock. Just nicer, not all ratty. Well, boys, thank you so much for coming out. No, we do high fives here, man. There you go, good connection. Hell yeah. Thank you so much for coming out. I couldn't have done it without these guys. I just don't have the expertise. And you know what? Figured if they're gonna be able to teach me, maybe you could learn a few things from this. So,
Thanks for tuning in.
These guys are more accustomed to working on $1 million hot rods here. And now, here they are in a parking lot in Long Beach, working on a clap down C10.